Hey guys, Trey Bender here with another episode of Program Stories. And today I'm sitting here with Miss EJ, and she went to Mount Bachelor Academy. So let's go ahead and get started. So, EJ, how old were you when you got sent there? And were you taken voluntarily or were you escorted?
Sorry, did you say how old was I?
Yes. Yes. How old were you? And were you escorted or did you go voluntarily to Mount Bachelor Academy?
I think I was 17.
Okay.
And I mean, I was there voluntarily in the sense that, I was not escorted by, hired escorts. My family, my mom drove me there. And I remember when I did the intake, they were like, this is voluntary, like, are you willing to sign this? And I was like, oh, I don't have to sign this. Like, and I think when I kind of pushed them on that, it became clear, no, actually I did have to sign it. So anyway, no, I was not voluntary, but yes, it did look voluntary.
Okay. So were you tricked into going, or did what happened?
No, I was not tricked into going. My mom told me it was happening. Okay. And I just I was a teenager, and my mom, she hadn't allowed me to have any jobs. I didn't have any money of my own. I didn't have any experience living and taking care of myself. And so I didn't feel that I had a choice. I was offered other places to live. A couple of people actually, people from my school, like teachers, the headmistress of my school, called my mom and was like, why are you doing this? Like, it was known. I knew about it. People in my life knew about it. So no, it wasn't a surprise. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Sorry. I mean, I shouldn't, like I said, it was not voluntary. So I did not get myself into it, but I didn't know what was ahead of me. When I got in the car and went there. Yeah, it's actually a little bit difficult to talk about. Nobody's really asked me about, like, I've never really talked about, like, what it was like to get there and to do the intake and all of that.
Okay.
I've just talked about, some of the stuff we did in the program. So it's kind of weird to talk about that.
Okay. When you first got there, what was running through your mind, though?
I don't know. I mean, when I think about it, like, it just kind of seems like a jumble to me. Especially since then, I've dealt with a lot of dissociation. And so I definitely, I have not been formally diagnosed with CPTSD. I mean, well, you can't be formally diagnosed with CPTSD.
Yeah.
I have treated for PTSD relating to my time at Mount Bachelor Academy. I don't have a formal diagnosis of it. There's not a lot of people who really understand what even happened there.
Sure.
Yeah, and so when I tell someone, that I went to this strange school, they're like, "Oh, sounds weird." That's it. So anyway,
I think I understand that. What is something about your time at Mount Bachelor that stands out in your mind, like something that you'll always remember?
Loneliness and fear.
What about it made you feel lonely and afraid? Like, what was going on?
I was never alone. Wasn't that. Emotional loneliness. Emotional isolation. Of course, it was labeled as an emotional growth boarding school, and supposedly we talked about our emotions all the time, but if you've done an interview with someone from MBA before, you know that, I mean, in a lot of these programs, attack therapy is used.
Yeah.
And that's extremely alienating. I did actually go on to get my bachelor's degree in child development.
Okay.
And so I understood better after I learned maybe more psychology than the people who had been treating me at MBA, why that was so terrifying, such a terrifying experience as a teenager, who's still going through the identity, what Erickson calls the identity formation stage.
Very much, yes. Oh yeah.
And you know, it's almost as if the techniques that they use there, the Synanon techniques, are just like the worst thing to do for a teenager, especially a teenager who's struggling in any way. Like, it's just such a, it's like the just the best time to kind of go in there and do something and it's the most traumatic time to use that particular approach to talking to people. So yeah, I felt afraid because I knew that genuineness and authenticity was being demanded of me, but I had no idea how to be authentic or genuine. And this gave me an existential crisis, because I was like, how can I not know myself? How can I not understand what I'm truly feeling and thinking and remembering when these people are like yelling at me for, you know, what I'm trying to say? And so it was that kind of fear. I didn't have fear of being hurt by somebody. It wasn't like that. It was a fear. It was like an ego fear. It was like a psychological fear.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What kinds of things would you see done to other students? Like, what forms of punishment were typical at Mount Bachelor on a daily basis that you saw?
I mean, obviously bans. So bans was when you were banned from something. And usually, to my memory, this is a long time ago. And like I said, I dissociation is something that I've dealt with since then. So my memory is not going to be perfect.
Of course, I understand. I understand.
So to my memory, bands would often be like, you would have bands with maybe like an individual person or an entire gender. At that time, you know, it was just, people were just talking about, you know, uh, young men and young women. But maybe a topic. Sometimes people would be on total bans, and in that case, no one was allowed to talk to them at all, and they would be like out, like in areas where other people were. I think they always were, but they would like always have to like sit at a desk by themselves. So it was kind of, you know, isolation. It was a psychological isolation, not, you know, a physical isolation.
Gotcha.
That was a punishment that I saw a lot. Of course, like, you know, if you did something, you would get a work project on Sunday. Like if you broke a rule or something, you might get a work project.
I've actually heard about these work projects before. What kinds of things would what would a work project be?
So I think that you would only do it. I mean, well, depends on the situation. Some people might be having to do a work project for like, I don't know, a whole week or something. But usually they were just Sundays. Sundays were the day where we like cleaned the whole campus, and that was intense too. Like, you had to like get right down on the carpet and like pick up like little stuff, and like it was extremely very detail oriented.
Gotcha.
And like just like very thorough. So work projects could be things like, you know, moving rocks from one place to another.
I've heard of this. I've heard of this before, actually. What else could it be?
So I was on work projects for a while, and it was like springtime, I think. And so what I did was I was like chipping away at ice on a path somewhere. I remember just like chipping away with a pickaxe, and I remember it was some kind of task, and my teenage self, I'm not sure if my now self would agree with my teenage self. My teenage self felt that it was a really pointless activity. I suspect I was right. But because
Okay.
I think it was, anyway, it definitely felt pointless. Um, um, I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't feel that it was like physically, like too demanding for me. I was tired, and I'm sure I complained. I'm not saying that that means it was appropriate. I'm just saying that it's not like I pulled a bunch of muscles and became, disabled over the short term. That didn't happen. That doesn't mean it was appropriate.
Okay. How long were you at Mount Bachelor?
Uh, maybe a little less than 2 years.
So you were there a long time.
Or maybe just over a year, more than a year.
More than a year. Okay.
Because I think I was 17 when I arrived, and that was the other thing. When people offered for me to come and stay with them, honestly, looking back on it now, actually, that really could have been possible, but it would have. I might be glad that I didn't do that, because that would have been difficult for my family, right? Not that I should at that time have been making decisions about my family, but in retrospect, my family had already been experienced enough turmoil that in retrospect, maybe I'm okay with it. But at the time, I thought, since I was 17, if I went and lived with someone else, I mean, I thought that would be like kidnapping or something, which is funny considering the fact that escorts exist. But
Yeah, no. You got that right.
yeah, actually, I remember after I had turned 18, I definitely I didn't, my mom said that I couldn't go back and live with her. So for me, I felt that I didn't have any place to go. I had to complete the program in order to have a place to be. But I remember after I turned 18, so like I'm trying to, how long was I there? I was 17 when I got there. I turned 18 while I was there, and I remember there was a workshop, emotional growth workshop, and at one point after I had turned 18, and I was given a bus ticket to Portland, I think.
Okay.
Which I'm like, I don't need a bus ticket to Portland. I need a bus ticket home. Like, what am I going to do in Portland?
Where
Which,
was home for you?
not even near Seattle, in Kitsap County,
Okay.
Washington, across the Puget Sound from Seattle.
Okay, so you were from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I had been there for a few years, but I grew up in Northern Virginia. Lee,
Okay.
are you okay? You want to come here? Come here. My dog wants to stare at me and cry.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You had mentioned the seminars that you were made to go to. Could you tell us a little bit about those and what they were like?
Okay, so what did we call them? We called them life steps.
Life
Steps.
steps. Okay.
And they were basically like 2 day, one. They were usually 2 days, but I think at least one earlier one was just a 1 day, like a therapeutic workshop, but using brainwashing techniques. Sprinkle a little brainwashing techniques in there. So they were always emotionally intense. We were asked pretty like asked to go to kind of pretty charged memories, and explore pretty strong emotions. And especially the later ones. The later ones used more, I mean, literally, they were the same brainwashing and torture techniques that are used and have been used. Things like loud music, that's played on repeat, keeping us up, not allowing us to sleep until the very early hours of the morning. Of course, they didn't let us see clocks either. Limiting our food. So like not letting us eat for periods of time. I don't remember getting extremely hungry, but I think that's an easy thing to forget. I imagine that I did become quite hungry at times, but I wouldn't say that that was the worst of it. The worst of it was the sleep deprivation, was the music, the repetitive nature of the music. Sometimes there would be flashing lights. And it definitely, and I think they were purposely doing this, it definitely, I remember kind of getting into these like these states, these mind states of, you know, being tired and just kind of out of it. And I think that for them, they thought that being in that kind of mind state was therapeutically helpful, and would allow, look, I don't know what they were thinking. But it was definitely a vulnerable mind state. It was not a clear mind state. It was easy to cry. And it was easy to feel emotion, but, you know, were they emotions triggered by the upsetting circumstances, or were they all emotions that were from, you know, memories? There is scientific evidence that shows that you cannot say which it is. So I remember once during a life stat, like, okay, sorry, I don't remember, but apparently I shared some story, some sad story about something, some memory. And then later, like, I don't know, a week later or something, my mentor, we were assigned a mentor, like there were
I've
three
heard of
stages.
this. I've heard of these mentors before. So yeah. Yeah, tell me
Yes,
more about that.
there were like 3 stages to the program, and like you advanced each stage, usually with your peer group, although like your peer group meaning the people, the 10 or so people who at the time I was there, peer groups got larger after I was there, and I think they were often smaller before I was there, but the time I was there, peer groups were often around 10 people. So your peer group was the people who came to MBA around the same time you did.
Okay.
And usually you moved up in the program with your peer group. I was dropped to peer group because I initially refused the program because I wasn't comfortable being emotionally vulnerable with these people I didn't know. And so I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't know these people. I'm not going to be emotionally vulnerable with them. And so they were like, okay, go to Sue. So anyway, but anyway, so at one point in one life step, apparently I shared a memory.
Uh-huh.
And then a week or so later, my mentor, oh, sorry, and you had different mentors based on the stage.
Gotcha.
My mentor at the time spoke to me brought up that memory and like wanted to talk to me more about it. And I was like, wait, I said that, like, that doesn't make sense because I couldn't, that wasn't possible because I guess like it was like I was saying that I was in a place in my house during a certain period of time when my dad was dying. But at the time father was dying, that place did not exist because my mom remodeled the house afterwards. So yeah, basically the exact same thing that I just said, like scientific research shows that you can induce memories, like not induce memories, but like you can suggest memories to people. And when like hypnosis and things like that, it basically is a stage where people are very sensitive to having what they think of as their memory being influenced. And I think that's what happened during the life stat. You know, I was being pressured to share some terrible, you know, emotional thing I'd been holding back, and so I made something up. And I didn't. I'm positive that I didn't intentionally do that, but it's difficult to accept that. It's, you know, it's like, and that's a big thing that the school did, is that it introduced so much self-doubt. You know, it put so much emotional strain on me and asked things that were impossible, and pushed me to be emotionally vulnerable, which is, that's damaging no matter what someone went through. And anyway, and it's taken me a very long time to begin to recover from that. I think So I'm almost 40 now. So that was 20 years ago. And it's definitely, I don't have as much difficulty as I used to, but it definitely has a long-term effect.
I want to ask, how often was food you withheld as punishment at Mount Bachelor? Like, how often was that used?
I don't recall that. I don't recall that ever being used. But I don't know. I've never been fat, and so I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, the staff was fat phobic and if they did use that punishment for fat people. So it's not something I experienced, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And I don't recall seeing that happen. When I say that food was withheld, what I mean is like they delayed, you know, like
Okay.
lunchtime or something.
Okay. I get that. Tell me about the way the staff would treat you and the other girls there. Like, how would you describe that? Like, what would the staff do? You said some of the staff was fat phobic, and
Um,
what else could they?
Yeah, well, I'm assuming that the staff was fat phobic just because that I think it's a safe assumption. Most people are fat phobic. You know, I'm trying to, you know, deal with that myself personally too. Well, okay, so that question, there's actually a lot that you're asking in that question. So you asked about me and the girls. First of all, so at that time when I was at MBA is when I was not able to articulate it at the time, but it is when I first started, like when I think back on it now, I can see it's when I first started knowing that I am not straight.
Okay.
And I was shamed for that. And it's just kind of weird because at the time I really didn't understand that that was what was going on, that I didn't know that being bisexual is a thing. I had never heard of the term. And I just knew that like I had thoughts and feelings and I didn't know what it meant.
I understand.
And also at the time, was it, I think through a lot of my life, I can look back and can see times where I can see thoughts I had that indicate that that I was not cisgendered. But certainly also at MBA was a time when that was going on, and anything, all of that stuff. I was shamed. Like there was an assumption made that I was friendly with someone only because that person was a lesbian, and I was kind of like, my mentor actually talked to me about that, like she said, like, oh, you only want to do that with her because she's gay, you know? And or I think she said lesbian. I don't think she said gay, but you know, so there was it's not that I was told it's not okay to be gay. I wasn't outright told that, but I saw how gay people, how homosexual people were treated, and
Okay.
there's definitely an implicit message that basically deviation from being a straight girl, you know, that's not really welcome here. So a straight cisgender girl. So that said, how are the girls treated? You know, so it was a boarding school, so we were divided by between men and women.
Yeah.
Yes. I know at least one other trans person who was there at that time. And so yeah, like there's no acknowledgement of anything like that there. So there's young men and young women dorms, and I would say at the time, before I went to MBA, I would say I generally tended to have, I don't know, maybe more male friends. But I had female friends too. But when I came to MBA, I was very uncomfortable with the young women who I was with. I felt that there was like, I perceived that there was, it seemed to me that there was like a lot of drama, a lot of like not being honest with each other, like backstabbing, couldn't trust each other. I think that was generated by, the confrontation therapy being used very loosely in that sentence, and by the general culture of the school. I don't think that there was actually, it's quite sad actually. I don't think that that the young woman I was with, I think it was a very bad situation for us to be in.
I imagine so. It definitely sounds like it.
Yeah.
I want to ask, how was the housing? Like, what was that like? Did you guys have rooms, or was it a room full of bunk beds? Like, what was that like?
So I think I don't know about the young men's dorms, but the young women's dorms, it was like a building, and it was divided in two, and the bathrooms were in the middle. So like it was two separate dorms in one building.
Okay.
And I think each dorm had 5 beds. And they were not bunk beds. They were like beds arranged throughout the room.
Okay.
No like walls or anything to divide to like give personal space like that. You could go into the bathroom and close the door, but not really, because there's 5 people sharing the bathroom. And so you couldn't really, if you wanted private time to yourself, you could go to the bathroom like in the middle of the night, but someone would come and be like, you can't be in here by yourself. We weren't really allowed to have alone time. We had like a little personal board, and we could like put up like pictures, and we had to have the stuff that was on it, of course, had to be approved, but I don't know, pictures of our family, letters from people. So we had like a personal display place. We had, I think, a little table, or like a little table area. And then under our bunks was some storage, drawers. And then there was a dorm head, and that person, it was their job, like they were in charge of the dorm. They were in charge of making sure everyone woke up on time. And yeah, it really sucked to be a dorm head if you had somebody in your dorm who did not get up on time, which I did have that situation. And man, because we were punished if they weren't up on time. And I did some cruel things when I was dorm head, to try to get people up on time.
Like, what would you have to do?
I recall like pulling someone out of bed, like when they were still, I don't know if this person was like still asleep, or if they were like pretending to be asleep. I don't remember, but the point is I should never have pulled someone out of bed. That's completely not okay. So yeah.
Was there a culture there of having to do things like that to other people in order to get ahead?
Yeah, no, that was expected.
It was expected.
It was like, of course I had to do that. And I imagine I probably confronted that person during the group therapy sessions, and yelled at them about it.
What would have happened to somebody if they refused to do things like that, like call people out and
Yeah, so like that was what I tried to do in the beginning. I was like, this is not okay. Like yelling at people is not okay. That's not okay with me. And of course, in the beginning, we weren't, you weren't expected to do those kinds of harmful things to other people until you were more mature, like more advanced in the program. And what that means is it was, of course, until you have been more indoctrinated into the cult, you aren't going to agree with the cult's um mores. You're gonna say that's really fucked up. So they didn't ask that of people who were early in the program. So I refused initially, but that was more just about me refusing to open up. And that was when I was sent to the wilderness program. But also people who, I don't know about someone who like refused to call people out. I don't know. It just didn't, I don't know that it really happened that much. I know that I resisted it, and I know that my friend went at the school tried to resist it. I tried to resist it, or at least I had thoughts of resisting it.
gotcha.
And so what ended up happening, I know my friend really did resist it quite a bit. And my friend got yelled at a lot and was really alienated by the other young woman.
Okay.
That's what. So it's like there were natural consequences for not following along with the culture.
Okay. Tell me about what the staff would do. Like, what kinds of interactions would you have with the staff as you got higher up in the program?
As you got higher up, you could have more like what I would call genuine interactions with staff. Like having a meal with them. At least one of the staff, a few of the staff members lived near campus, and you might be invited over for like an evening. But it was like, for me, it was something like extremely special. I definitely felt like an imposter when I was invited. It was a mistake. Like just the whole time, just there was so much, it was really a time of feeling just extremely alienated, a feeling of alienation that I had never felt before in my life, even with the difficulties that I had had. And those difficulties, which, by the way, like were not really, they were quite different than what other people in the program dealt with. Like a lot of the other people in the program had dealt with like drug use. Like definitely people would, I'm sure some people said that they were dealing with drug abuse. Like I'm a teacher now. I'm working on becoming a psychologist. Like the way that people were talking about things, then I would never talk about them now in the same way. But yeah, so it was I didn't have the same experiences and struggles as a lot of the other people who were there, and that was alienating too, to feel that I was being lumped in with them and treated exactly the same way. Not to say that like I was like I shouldn't be with these people, but to be like I don't understand what happened with me, what the commonality was, where we are all served by this same therapeutic technique.
Gotcha. What regrets do you have from your time there?
I regret a lot of my behavior. I regret, the way that I treated other people. I really, um, I don't even remember most of it, but like I remember some of it.
Okay.
And I feel upset when I think about, I must not remember all of it. And
It's okay. It's okay.
I know that, for me, I might not even remember it, but I know that I could have made a really big difference in someone else's life.
I understand.
I'm sorry to cry because
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
no, I mean I know it's okay to cry with you, but what I'm saying is my dog doesn't like it when I cry, so he just left. um, I'm so sorry if there were actions of mine that really affected other people. I really hope that's not the case, and I think it's quite likely that at least something I did was at least very impactful, and I really regret that.
I understand. Hey, if it means anything to you, just know you're not the only one. I think about my time when I was going through what I went through, and I think about times where I threw people under the bus just to get ahead, and I regret that now. I look back on that now, and I think, man, I wish I hadn't have done that. And so I understand. I get it. So don't think you're the only one. And these things happen. I get that.
And that's what makes me really angry, because the school absolutely, like, that was what they wanted to
Yeah,
see.
yeah, it was exactly what they wanted.
It was called a cleanup. It was called a cleanup. And then we had at least one school-wide cleanup, and where everybody was encouraged to rat on absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I take responsibility for my actions. It doesn't matter that I was coerced. It doesn't matter that I was young. I take responsibility for them because that's important to me, to be accountable for my actions. But the adults were the ones who created this atmosphere.
Yeah, they did. Oh, yeah, they did. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they just got together and talked about how they could do that.
Yeah. No, I'm positive they did. You know,
Oh, yeah.
because it's important to running the program.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was intentional.
Of course it was. Of course it was. Given your time there and everything that happened to you, how has it affected you going into your adult life, like going through college? How has your time there affected you?
Wow, I'm going to answer that. Hold on just a second. I'm going to grab something off screen. Do you mind if I swallow some pills?
Not at all. Go ahead.
I get migraines, which is unrelated. Okay. So yeah, I developed anxiety afterwards.
Okay.
I was also diagnosed with bipolar 2 afterwards. And it is often, Holy honey, I'm not crying anymore. You want to come here? He's like staring at me from around the corner. I was diagnosed with ADD before I was diagnosed with bipolar 2. And they're often comorbid, and often bipolar is misdiagnosed as ADD, or ADD is like often they're misdiagnosed. But because I was diagnosed with ADD before, I think that I really truly have both.
All right.
I suspect that bipolar runs in my family. I think that my time at MBA, because not everybody, you know, really, like bipolar 2 can get worse. It can develop into bipolar 1. And I think that my time at MBA exacerbated, you know, mental health vulnerabilities that I had. I was also later diagnosed with generalized anxiety and panic disorder, panic attacks.
Gotcha.
And I absolutely think that I think that MBA exacerbated vulnerabilities, and that is why my bipolar, a large part, maybe not all, but a large part of why I developed bipolar 2. And I'm going to go ahead and put a big load of the blame for my anxiety disorder on MBA, because there's nothing, you know, to like give you anxiety like looking forward to getting yelled at twice a week.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Yeah, I got that a lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got that every day. Like, yeah, I got that too. So I get that. Oh yeah, I understand. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, that you'd like to say about your time at Mount Bachelor Academy?
Well, just I do want to, I didn't really fully answer you. I would say it has affected my relationships also.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's been more difficult to like be vulnerable with people, to share myself, to let people in. I think I made a lot of progress there, but it's been hard. And I've worked with a therapist to. I'm not currently working with a therapist, but I did do a lot of work with someone for a couple years, where we did that. We focused on that. Sorry, I think I was just with her for 1 year. Where we focused on MBA and how it affected me, and dealing with that.
All right.
Yeah, and then what else do I have to say? These programs are abusive. They're absolutely abusive. Childism leads to abuse, and children have rights. Teenagers have rights that should not be violated. And a lot of mine were, and they led to long-term, lifelong emotional distress. And you know, if you're gonna bother to have a government, then it should protect you from that.
Yes, it should. Yes, it should. Do you keep in contact with any of the other girls that you were at MBA with? Or do you have any contact with anybody from MBA to this day?
Um, I'm in a couple of Facebook groups that other people who went to MBA, like alumni, are in. But there's a lot. I'm sure you've seen the same thing. There's a big divide. There's people who think it was great and really helped them, and I believe that. I believe that it really helped them. But just because it helped them does not mean it was good. That
That's
is not
right.
how you determine that it was good. You determine
Right.
that it was good by it helping everybody, or at least not harming anybody.
That's right, man. I get
Yeah, so
that.
that, yeah, so it's not a community,
No.
it's divided. I would say there's only one person I've really stayed in contact with. I visited him once. I did stay friends with my friend from that school for a while. Our friendship did end non-consensually. She didn't want to be my friend anymore, largely because of mistakes I made that, were they influenced by MBA? I don't know, whatever, that happened and I did that and I'm sad about that. Um, but I'm not going to blame that on MBA. But in general, no. And when I first graduated, that was really painful for me because of all of the vulnerability that they demanded of us. And then they just like set us free. And then I was totally without this, what I began to see was a totally fabricated emotional community, emotionally supportive community. It was totally absent. Nobody stayed connected afterwards, which I definitely blame school for, but of course, who would have done that except for the other students? And of course, why would they do that with me? Like they're living their own lives. So yeah, that was difficult when I first graduated.
Anything else you want to add?
No, well, I just want to thank you for doing this. I'm glad that you're doing this. Well, we did not.
I have one last thing I want to ask you before we
Yeah.
go. If you could talk directly to the owners and the staff of Mount Bachelor Academy, what would you say?
I would say that I would tell them
Okay.
not to write me off as just somebody who happened to not do well.
Gotcha.
Because their intentions did not matter. The effect of their actions is what mattered.
Gotcha. That's all?
Thank you.
Is that all you wanted to say?
Oh, to them. So that thank you is not to them.
Yeah.
I've let go of a lot of my anger.
I understand that. Well, EJ, thanks so much. Trey Bender, Program Stories, sitting here with Miss EJ. Thanks, guys.